You guys can have a seat. Well, we're going to continue our series in James this morning, and I'm really pumped because last week we talked about faith and works and how that works together, and faith leads me to works, and works encourage my faith, and we talked about what it looks like to even have works. What are these good works? And in the very next chapter, James talks about something that all of us need to admit we need to improve in. I've never met anyone who would look me in the face and say, I've got this area covered. So as we go through this series in James, talking about faith and works, one of the easiest ways for us to figure out if our faith is working is to look at this portion of our life that James is going to talk about in James chapter 3. But before we do, I want you to know what we're going to talk about. We are going to discuss this morning, and y'all know I'm terrible at titles. I hate titling sermons. I hate titling messages, but I do it just for y'all because I know you need one, all right? So here's today's title, Mouthful of Trouble, all right? I don't know about you, but sometimes I have a tendency of saying things that I regret. As a matter of fact, the first verse we're going to read is going to say, hey, don't take it lightly when you speak to a crowd because of the things that you might say. And I don't know about you, but I've said a lot of things that I regret. I've said a lot of things up here that I regret. Things that I thought were going to be funny and were not funny. Things that I thought were going to be funny and they were offensive. Like, I have said things. We have all said things. And James knows that more than just making mistakes, some of us willingly choose to use our words to do evil. Some of us think sometimes that when we talk about faith and works, one of the ways we work out our faith is just to avoid sin that is physical. A lot of us do a lot of sinning with our mouth, with the words that we say. We think, well, we need to do good works with our hands. We need to build a home for the poor. We need to go on a mission trip. And God is saying, yeah, those are good things. But before you do that, maybe you should start building people up with your words before you even try to use your hands. So before we get into faith and works and talking about all these different things we could do, and we're going to go on the mission field and we're going to go love on people, we just need to learn how to do the simplest of things with our words, with our communication, with our mouths. So read with me in James chapter 3. We'll begin reading in verse 1. He says, my brother, he says, listen, not many of you should become teachers, my brothers, for you know that we who teach shall be judged with a greater strictness. This is just truth, guys. I'm going to be held to a higher standard because I teach others. God is looking down and he says, Mark, you got to get this right. You got to get this straight before you go teach other people these things, before you go share these things with other people. I am held to a higher standard. Not only in the church, but in God's eyes. Like, I better be doing things above reproach. There's a whole passage in 1st, 2nd, and Timothy and Titus about being a minister, about being a leader in the church, and how you're not just a volunteer. Now you're a leader. You're someone people look to. Your life has to be not perfect, but you better be doing things right. You better be loving your family right. You better be taking care of things in your own household. You better be somebody who's a model, an example in their faith, in their walk, in their works. You're going to screw up. I screw up. But we don't need to take it lightly when we teach others. So that's first of all right? But then verse 2, for we all stumble in many ways. And if anyone does not stumble in what he says, he is a perfect man, mature. We always know that the word perfect there means the idea of being mature. And also able to bridle his whole body. If you can handle this, man, you're going to, listen, if you can keep your mouth out of trouble, you're not going to be getting in fist fights too often, okay? If you can keep your words straight, you're not going to be having to backtrack with your feet too often because you got your words straight. Read on. He says in verse 3, if we put bits into the mouths of horses so that they obey us, we guide their whole bodies as well. Listen, this thing is a big deal. This mouth of ours, this communication of ours, these words. And so I want you to understand something first of all. Before we even get into like the points or the idea this morning, the main idea I want you to walk away with is this. My faith and your faith works when I honor God in my communication. Before we go out and try to build something, try to do something, try to impress people with our faith, we need to be understanding that our communication is one of the first ways that our faith works. And I use the word communication on purpose because when James wrote this, there were many ways to communicate. They could speak, they could write. We have even more ways to communicate today. We can speak, we can write, we can text, we can type, we can DM. That's where we say some real things we regret, right? It's not just what comes out of your mouth. Some of us have convinced ourselves that as long as we don't say it, it's not a big deal, but we'll type it in a heartbeat. We'll share it. We'll tag someone. We'll do little digs with these little clicks and posts and shares and DMs and somehow convince ourselves that we haven't said that. We've communicated that. And my faith works when I honor God in my communication. So I'm just going to leave this here for all of us. Would God be honored in the things that I say, post, share, like? Would God be honored in the things that I am pushing on other people and the things that I'm saying to other people online? Some of us are so good at being nice in person and then typing up a text message later that we would never have the guts to say. So let's get into this. Let's keep reading what the passage says here. We continue reading. Verse 3, it said about the horse. Like the whole horse is controlled by this little bridle in its mouth. Read verse 4. Look also at ships. Although they are so large and are driven by fierce winds, they are turned and guided by a very small rudder wherever the will of the pilot directs. Verse 5. So also the tongue is a small member, yet it boasts of great things. How great a forest is set ablaze by such a small fire. Those of you who've been out west understand that when you're camping, it's a big deal what you do with your fire. It's a big deal when somebody throws a cigarette out the window out west when they're under a fire warning. It's a big deal when somebody doesn't pay attention to where their firecrackers go inland, because all it takes is just a little spark to set a whole forest on fire in the dry parts of our country. And that blaze can kill people, it can ruin land, and it can ruin homes, because such a small thing can get so out of hand. And God is saying through James, your lips, your words are just as powerful. So I want us to look this morning at how powerful our words can be. So first of all, we need to understand that our words are powerful, and therefore they can change our lives. That's the beauty of communication that we have. God has given us something that is so powerful. Think of the words that you use. Think of the words that can change your life. Some of you said these words and they changed your life. You said, I do. Two simple words transform your life. Some of you are like, yeah. Had no idea those two words meant so much, right? Those are powerful words. Think of all the speeches that have gone down throughout history. I think of Martin Luther King Jr.'s speech, I have a dream. Just words, right? But it transformed people. It transformed a community. It transformed a country, and it started something that couldn't be stopped. I think of Abraham Lincoln, 7 years ago. One of the shortest speeches in history, but it united a generation. Guys, our words are incredibly powerful, and they have the power to transform and to change your life. Somebody in your life at one point said something to you that gave you the encouragement you needed to apply maybe to go to college. Somebody somewhere along the way gave you the encouragement to think you could go for that job, to that move across the country, do whatever it is that it took guts to do. Somebody put words in your ear. Somebody was an encouragement to you. So the good news is that words, they can change our lives, and they're powerful, and they can do great things. But the bad news is my words can also ruin my life. It said that a small blaze is set and can ruin a forest. But then read on in verse 6. And the tongue is a fire. This is the second time he mentions fire. A world of unrighteousness. The tongue is set among our members, staining the whole body, setting on fire, third time, the entire course of life, and set on fire by hell. He is saying fire a lot. We need to pay attention to this word. For every kind of beast and bird and reptile and sea creature can be tamed and has been tamed by mankind. He said, look, we can put things in cages. We can stop things from hurting us. There's some animals we tame to the point where they'll stay beside us and be our friend. We've learned to tame and control a lot of things on this planet. But we have a hard time taming and controlling our tongue. And he uses fire as an illustration because you know what? Here we are 2,000 years later. And listen, we've come a long way in technology. We control and we tame a lot of things. And yet, wildfires are still very difficult for us to contain, control, or tame. You think we'll just dump more water. That's not the problem. You think we'll just get ahead of it. We are still, all these years later, everything else has moved forward. And when a fire starts, if you don't stop it when it's small, it can be disastrous. It can be deadly. The same is true of your words when you're at work. The same is true of your words when you're in a fit of anger and you've let this boil up and you haven't repented of this grudge that you have and you just keep wallowing in anger and just jealousy and whatever it is that you have against this person, and then you begin to say things that you've been thinking about for a long time, and that spark is kindled and a fire is set, and once those words come out, there's their words coming back and then your words coming back, and before you know it, there's a wild storm of fire. Ruining relationships, dividing people, ruining any chance you ever had of presenting to the gospel or sharing Jesus' love with them, at least for right now. And it all started with a thought, with a word, with a snide remark. This is why Jesus was so emphatic that we are to turn the other cheek. And he wasn't just talking about physical, he was mostly talking about when people say awful and beguiling things against you, take it as encouragement, knowing that you are being talked about, spoken about for righteousness. Don't let them talk about your misdeeds. If you're doing wrong, they're going to talk about you. Let them only have good things, have bad things to say about the good things that you do, because you are living such a life. Your faith is working itself out. I don't have to look too far into my past to see things that I've said that I just regret. Things that I've said to people that I love. Things that I've said to people that I've hurt. When I was 15, I figured out that words are very powerful, and I figured out that as teenagers, everybody's very self-conscious and concerned about what people think about them. And as an immature teenager, I realized that if I had the fastest words and I had the meanest words, nobody would mess with me. And I said things to people that I can't believe I said. I didn't curse, and by the way, Christians, isn't that what we do? We don't curse, but we say things that are just worse than cursing. We know what to say to get under somebody's skin. We know what to bring up that will hurt them, will break their heart, will remind them of their brokenness. God never brings up forgiven, confessed, repented of sin. Only the devil does that. And when we do that to people, we're playing for the other team. And that was me. And I got really good at saying awful, mean things. I don't even want to be in the same room with some people I went to high school with. I don't want them to know that I'm a pastor. I am so embarrassed of the things that I said. The ways that I got under people's skin with words. You know, you can ruin your life with words. You can ruin other people's life with words. You can. I pray we don't. But read on. It gets better. Read verse 9 with me. Chapter 3, verse 9. With it, our mouth, we bless our Lord and Father, and with it we curse people who are made in the likeness of God. That's the number one reason we shouldn't be cursing people. That's the number one reason we shouldn't be talking about people. These are people made in God's image. From the same mouth come blessing and cursing. My brothers, these things ought not to be so. Let it not be said of us that we use our words to tear down. Last thing I have for you this morning, last thing I want to encourage you with is this. Yes, they can change our lives. Yes, they can ruin our lives. Most importantly, my words is what I want you to understand. My words are my works. These are the works that I will leave behind. When you are dead and gone, people will not remember what you owned. People will not remember how great a vacation you went on. People will not remember how much achievement and success you had. For the most part, people will remember what you said and what you did. They may not even remember exactly what you said, but they'll remember how you made them feel. And the easiest way for us to make somebody feel a certain way is the words that we use. If you want to build something with your tongue, with your mouth, with your words, use it to build people up. That's what my job is. That's what your job is with our words. Every word I speak is a brick. Every word you speak is a brick. And it's either building someone up or it's being hurled at them to tear them down. And I'm convinced that a lot of us as Christians, we have just decided that our words are meant to be hurled at the world to tear people down. And that is not why we're here. We are here to share the gospel, to help people build their real lives, what true life is all about. And so I want to help us communicate better. I want to help us use our words to build people up. So I've got 4 simple tips, all right? These are just, you guys know I want to be spiritual, but I also want to be practical. I want you to walk away with an idea of what to say. So 4 ways we can honor God in our communication. First of all, you need to talk less. You got to do less of it, right? Listen more. You're like, Mark, you up there talking the whole time. I know, but that's what I'm saying. The less we talk, the better often. Sometimes it's good to shut that mouth and open them ears. Talk less, listen more. Because when you listen to other people that you don't like or you disagree with, or you just can't understand why they're thinking that way, when you actually listen to them, what you'll begin to hear is their story of where they're from and some perspective, and you'll begin to understand why they do what they do, why they feel what they feel, why they are the way that they are. So talk less, listen more. Second thing, if you're going to listen, you got to get good at asking more questions. Too many of us want to just share facts and not ask questions. Ask questions. Questions are powerful words. More powerful than me pointing out what's wrong with you, with your statement, is for me to ask a follow-up question and make you think about that statement. Ask more questions. Number 3, delay your response. There are some times you just need to walk away. There are some times you need to put the phone down. There are some times you need to not respond to that email for 24 hours. Believers, let me remind you, we ought to be examples in our communication, in our speech, in our responses. The 4th tip, and I think this is the biggest, best one, pray over your words. Now you pray for safety when you go on a trip. You pray over the meal you're going to eat. You pray when somebody's sick. When's the last time you got up and you said, God, today I pray that every word I speak would be honoring to you. I pray that when I get angry, I would learn to hold my tongue. I pray that even when it's righteous anger, I would respond in the right way and not use words I don't need to use. God, I pray that I would encourage someone who needs encouragement. I would bless someone who needs blessing. I would be there for somebody who needs to hear just the right thing. And God, I may not even know what to say. So I'm praying that you would give me the right words in that moment. God, be with my words today. You have not because you ask not. It's not Mercedes and mansions. That's spiritual, and that's something like this. Some of us, we've never asked God to help our words. We've never asked God to be with our words. Ask him and see what he does. See the opportunities he gives you to use your words to make a difference. Ah, man, this is bad. This is in my notes. For some of you, when you say amen to that prayer, the first thing he's going to tell you is exactly what to say, and you're not going to like it. He's going to say, well, the first thing you need to say is, I'm sorry to somebody. Ugh. Not that, God. Something else. Somebody else. God knows what you need to say. He knows what you don't need to say. And I'd remind you that that verse said, don't let your mouth be blessing God this way and cursing people this way. This is not a dual-purpose mouth. This is not a dual-purpose communication. I dare not be sending emails inviting people to church from the same account that I'm sending emails bashing Susie for what she wore yesterday, okay? I don't know why I came up with that. I don't know anybody named Susie, so I'm covered. Y'all know we're real good at talking one way here and one way there. And I'm just going to say this. My words, they speak louder than many of the other works that I focus on. You say, Mark, I read my Bible every day this week. Yeah, but you cussed out 3 people at your work. Don't nobody know you read your Bible unless you posted it online. All they remember is that guy that showed up at 8:30. Mark, I spent an hour in prayer this week. That's awesome. You also went on a tirade online and everybody saw it. Everybody saw it. They didn't see your alone time with God. They saw you flying off the handle. Some of us are focusing on works over here and we're forgetting that our words, man, they are the most out there, alive works we have. If somebody were to sum up the way you talk to people, the way you talk about people, the way you talk based on a week of your life, what would they say? Would they say, he's an encourager? Man, she's a motivator. They build people up. Or would they say, they don't talk much, but when they do, it ain't good. They never have much to say to me in the morning. They're always giving people looks. All they want to talk about is what they want to talk about, what they're passionate about, what they care about. They'll never ask me how I'm doing. You say, Mark, that person you're talking about sounds selfish. Yeah, we're surrounded by the world, guys. We got to love them. We got to show grace to them. We got to be the different one. We got to be the one who goes after people who are mean. We got to be the one who responds in grace when everyone else doesn't. That's what's attractive about the gospel. It's not attractive when we're just like everyone else in how we respond. So what's your words going to do this week? What you building with your words? Or are you just tearing down stuff, lives, people, with your words? Will you pray with me this morning as we close out?